Welcome back to the Brothers Mahoney. This is Michael.
And I am James.
And today we are discussing The Wall, which came out just earlier today on April 26th, 2025. And this is the third episode of series 15, and it's written by Russell T. Davies and Sharma Angel-Walfall. And the plot, and I think this is taken probably from Disney Plus. Far in the future, on a tough, brutal planet, a devastated mining colony has only one survivor. To discover the truth, the Doctor and Belinda must absolute terror. Which is a nice, playful description.
Yeah, it doesn't really give all that much away in terms of the plot at all, and that's for good reason, as we'll discuss shortly.
And of course, we have Gatwa as the Doctor, Varada Sethu as Belinda, and the other names are all of moderate import. We have a Keelan Dan playing Shreya. She's sort of the, commanding officer. A Christopher Chang playing Casio, who's somewhat of an, arguably antagonistic-ish type force. Certainly doesn't get along with the Doctor, but we'll discuss him a bit. A Rose ailing Alice playing a woman named Alice. She is, the plot description says, the one survivor of this mining colony. And then lastly, we have a surprise appearance at the end of this episode being Anita Dobson playing Mrs. Flood.
Which, for the record, I totally predicted in our discussion last episode of Lux. Now, maybe spoilers had come out. Apparently there were spoilers floating around for this episode that gave away something quite important about it. I don't know, I hadn't really seen those spoilers. There's a reason I don't, and we've mentioned it before, there's a reason we don't pay much attention to pre-production stuff and what people talk about on Twitter, and it's because you see spoilers anywhere you go. You open a Reddit thread on something, and you could accidentally see a spoiler if something's not tagged correctly. So, I don't know, it just doesn't seem worth the risk. And I had heard, I suppose, through Michael, what this might have been a sequel to, but it's nothing that I ever knew was a confirmation or anything. So I was just watching it to see where it was going, and when it eventually did sequelize itself, I thought that was a very nifty experience, not knowing for sure that's where it was going. As for Mrs. Flood, if I finished my thought last episode when I had it, I suspected that if she showed up this episode, it would only be at the very end after the Doctor had left. Which is what happened in Lux, and it's what happened here, so that was kind of nice to see. And I personally enjoyed her time here as well. It wasn't a very long time, but nonetheless, it was nice seeing her, and she looked rather snazzy in the type of space get-up they were wearing.
Yeah, it did have a nice snazzy dark feel to it, which I guess could be sad for the whole of the episode too. This isn't the most playful episode in recent times.
Well, something was playful.
Although I guess you could argue it has similar vibes to Boom.
It is very similar to Boom. In fact, isn't it Boom after the third episode of the season?
Yeah, I believe it would have been.
Yeah, so actually, and Lux did have more than a couple of similarities and a lot of references to the Davies Code. So I wonder if this is almost playing into the whole...
And did 73 Yards come after Boom? And next episode is Lucky Day?
Yeah, this is in fact true. So I wonder if that's completely intentional in terms of season structure. So maybe that means you get Comrade Slag back after Lucky Day.
Is that one story in the engineers, the one after Lucky Day, the Intergalactic Song Contest?
No, it has to be Tori in the engine because Intergalactic Song Contest is right before the season finale to Powder. And think about that, we're almost halfway through the season already. 8 episodes. If you're listening, RTD, and I know you don't have full control, and I actually know he's not listening, but 8 episodes is not enough. I'm sorry, it just isn't. Now, if you're going to keep the episodes in just a 45 to 50 minute ratio, nonetheless, I thought this episode was actually quite strong. I don't think I liked it more than Lux, but it was certainly rather strong regardless, and it was nice having 2 back-to-back episodes that were legitimately good ones.
Yeah, and I can say for my part that I think it was a decent episode. I probably didn't enjoy it as much as James did, but it was good. To be honest, I don't have a lot of strong feelings about it, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So this episode starts with the Doctor and Belinda trying to use that machine that the Doctor made in the last episode, which I believe what he called the Vindicator. It's a quality name.
Yeah, and that just made me think of Rick and Morty again. Again, that's 2 episodes back to back. And Rick and Morty isn't even a show I've watched in 2 or 3 years. But I know there's the whole Vindicators episode, so it's just poisoned my mind, I suppose.
Yeah, and they're trying to use that again to fish hook the way back to Belinda's time. It didn't work the first time they got to meet Lux. And this time they went, I forget how far they went. Is it 500,000 years in the future?
Yeah, I think it was 500,000. Some huge number like that. And I have to admit, I thought the entire point was that they had to triangulate to get to fish hooking back to 2025. So when the Doctor tried and failed to get there, I was actually a little surprised that at least he was taking it so badly, because I thought the whole point was they were going to go to another place, pick the Vindicator up, do the whole process that way. I didn't think that after one planet it would just be fine. That's the entire point of triangulation. One is that just one doesn't cut it. But nonetheless, it was really nice to see basically direct continuation from Lux. They were in fact still wearing the same clothes they were wearing in Lux. So this probably takes place until Big Finish gets their hands on it. It takes place probably just 3 minutes, 4 minutes after they enter the TARDIS at the end of Lux, which is a very nice way to make the season feel tight in terms of storyline. This is what Flux sort of been.
Yeah, and I made the reference before that's somewhat similar to the Nova Space Station stuff back in Tom Baker's, I guess it would have been his first season. So it's nice to see a more connected, like one after the other series, at least so far. Adds a little extra charm to it, and certainly it feels a lot more connected than the arguably disjointed first season of Gatwa's Fault.
Yeah, I thought that was an extremely disjointed season. It was a very strange season. I think that one was hurt a lot after by the 8 episodes, a lot more than this one I think is going to be. Because with 8 episodes, what you need to do is you need to have a very connected story. Since you have so little time to meet these people, meet the companion, Belinda, you have to have a connected story and a good storyline. And this is a pretty good storyline. They're now pondering if the Earth got destroyed, what exactly was going on with that. Because while we, the audience, saw the end of the Robot Revolution, the still slightly absurd, I think the Statue of Liberty was one of the things still floating, but the pyramid was just floating in space. The Doctor and Belinda and whatnot didn't see it. They have no idea why they can't get back to the planet. Except now they're wondering maybe the Earth got destroyed. And we see that that's at least seems to be the case, but we just don't quite know why yet. And for some reason, Belinda's upset about that. With the way that the Earth is going, maybe it's about to get destroyed, but that's neither here nor there.
But yeah, we have the Doctor and Belinda going in the far future. In another one of those quick clothing montages, we see them quickly change clothes. So maybe that's going to be another common theme between episodes.
I guess it's a quick way to deal with the issue. It's still not my favorite. I don't think it's ever going to be my favorite, but if that's the style they're going for right now, I guess that's the style they're going for.
And yeah, what was that song? Was that Toxic by Britney Spears playing?
Yeah, which didn't connect at the time, but that also played obviously in The End of the World, the second episode of the Reviver series. It was, I believe, an old Earth classic.
Yeah, it was played on an iPod.
That wasn't an iPod. that was pretty funny. And I don't know why Toxic was playing, except that perhaps it makes people think, oh, Under the Earth, like what, like getting destroyed in 2025. I don't know. I'm very interested in this whole season arc thing. I really want to know where it's going, but I suppose now's not the time to theorize. But once they got dressed up in these rather sleek-looking spacesuits, they are forced to jump out of the ship and land on this planet 6767, something to that effect?
Yeah, that was the designation anyway.
And that's all it ever was. It's basically just a day's spa. Or at least it had been a day's power 400,000 years ago.
You're at Lan. And like James said, this is something that may have been leaked previously. And I'm not sure to what extent, but I had heard somewhere that some episode this season was going to be a sequel to one of the revival episodes of the past. I'm not sure if we knew which episode is going to be a sequel, and I'm not sure if people just assumed it was this one. So I'm not sure the exact details people had. But this episode takes place on the planet that was previously known as Midnight, which may indeed be where Midnight, the classic episode of season 4, took place.
And this is really fun because they didn't reveal this until almost exactly halfway through the episode. So they did a lot of gold building up on the mystery. They get to this mining base. I think, what was it, for Mockery?
Yeah, it's a Mockery mining base, and they find that, I think 14 of the 15 colonists had been killed.
Oh, I thought it was more like 30 out of 31 or something like that.
It's the same idea.
Although maybe, yeah, either way, one person out of a group of colonists has survived. Only one. And that one being Alice Finley. And she was deaf. And other people here had this rather cool thing where if they spoke and if they clicked a button, they had to intentionally click the button. Everything they spoke would show up as text so she could read it, so she didn't have to just rely on lip reading, which she could do. But I'm assuming that would probably be somewhat annoying. No, this still keeps her hard focused and her eyes focusing just one spot while she's reading what text is popping up. But it's still rather deaf friendly, so I quite like that. And hey, the Doctor apparently has relearned signing after he gave it up for, I think, Singapore, or however you say it. Another type of signing, which is perhaps a little less important.
Yeah, I believe that's signing with flags, or using flags to communicate.
That was, of course, Peter Capaldi in Under the Lake. Capaldi was not the same type of Doctor as Gatwa was. I don't honestly think they'll get along too well. A multi-Doctor story between the 12th and the 15th will be a bit of a hoot. Hey, they did the 2 Doctors before. They can do a 2 Doctors again.
Yeah, that sounds like a playful combination. They have slightly different personalities. In this one, the Doctor is primarily trying to comfort both Belinda and then Alice, who's this scared woman, last survivor of a mysterious event, which again has left everyone aside from her dad. She just wants to get home to her daughter, but unfortunately she may be quote-unquote infected with something. Something is sort of latched onto her, being the mysterious entity that the Doctor remembers quite fondly.
And it was nice when it revealed that this planet was Midnight, and before that they mentioned that it was full of exotronic radiation and that had been stripped mined for diamonds, because that's, of course, the type of planet it was. I mean, 400,000 years is a very long time, and yet certain creatures still seem rather lively, so that's somewhat concerning. And this does, in fact, at least the Doctor implied, and outright said, that this was the same entity from Midnight, even though on the whole it was still acting a bit trollful, but it certainly wasn't doing any of the things, most of the things it was doing in Midnight, where it was doing the whole repeating thingy, which it's strange there was even a reference to that, but there you go. I did like how it flashed back for just 2 seconds, David Tennant from a scene during Midnight. And Midnight was one of those episodes that was, I think, one of the best ones of the revival, certainly of the Tennant era. I think it beats out Blink. For all the people parading Blink around, I think Midnight beats it. It's one of those episodes that also doesn't really feel like it needed a sequel, but if anybody was going to do a sequel or a follow-up, I suppose it's just as well that it was Russell T Davies, who did in fact write the original. And it makes me wonder exactly what Sharma Angel-Walfall had, what they were up to in the writing. Because obviously, I would assume most of the Midnight stuff and all of that was from Russell T Davies. Maybe Sharma came up with, and perhaps all of this is answered in the behind the scenes after the episode, which my brother and I don't watch. So it makes life a lot more fun to not know. And not knowing is basically the entire point of this Midnight Creature, because they brought it back just to not explain anything again. And to be fair, maybe explaining anything would feel pointless, but apparently it knows the Doctor's name, and Gatwa cries, I swear it's been 3 episodes in a row. I don't remember if he cried in joy to the Warlord, but he probably did. But his crying aside, the Midnight Entity, I suppose, is back in full form and actually had a physical appearance this time. So that's something. Not that we ever saw very much of it, which is also probably a good thing, but I have to admit, it appeared on the screen so little in the, I think there were 2, what you could call jump scares, that my brother and I actually had to rewind it both times, because neither time did we see it before it went back behind Alice's heart. So if it had been out for like a little longer, it might have worked better, but then maybe it would have lost its potential. Either way, it's very much like Insidious, which I've seen once and a half, maybe. And there were a couple of scenes like that in Insidious.
Yeah, and like James mentioned earlier, I think the fact that the Midnight Entity has sort of a different, or what's it term, modus operandi, it doesn't do the same type of thing. Instead of repeating, it's just hiding behind someone's head in a way, and like I said, latching onto them. So it's like people see it out of the corner of their eye, and it has a nice creepy vibe to it. But since it's not doing the same thing, I guess in that way, it just doesn't feel quite as connected to the original entity as you might otherwise think. I mean, obviously it's the same planet, but given it has a different way to screw with people, I guess that was just a nice choice it goes with.
I mean, I guess you don't do repeat the same trick twice, which I do understand. And plus, doing it this way keeps some suspense about what's going on and what they're dealing with until they decide to reveal it halfway through. So, I mean, I can't really fault it too much for that. And plus, what would really have been gained by them going through it all again anyway? And 400,000 years is a long time. I think anything would evolve in 400,000 years. And I guess lastly, as a counterpoint, it was mentioned that this creature liked basically screwing with people. So, doing things this way, it's just another way to screw with people. Now, I'm not as convinced that it was trying to screw with people the first time around. I do like the idea that it was just trying to learn and then get control of the people during that encounter. It certainly wasn't above board here. I suppose I'll phrase it that way.
Yeah, unlike Midnight, there's another allusion, I guess, to that episode. Because much like Midnight, in this episode, the Doctor sort of loses control of the situation. Of course, he uses his psychic pay bid to ensure these. I guess technically, I don't know if it's technically a military operation, but he uses a psychic pay bid and they pretty much think that he's above them. But because he sort of consistently antagonizes Cassio, who's more of, I guess, a straight-laced, stick-in-the-mud type guy, very by the book, doesn't have much care for the Doctor's antics, nor does he like being called babes.
I thought it was very disrespectful that the Doctor literally ignores a request flat out. No, I suppose it wasn't so much a request as, hey, it's just inappropriate to call him that. But either way, they are on a mission. The Doctor sort of a little bit of respect for the fact that he's involved in something that he knows nothing about. But I suppose when else the Doctor have respected that. But if somebody asks you that they're before you not do something, you would think the Doctor, in most cases, when it comes to a personal preference like that, would usually respect that.
I just don't think he cares about people. Never has, never will.
I mean, that would have been the case during Capaldi's time.
I do think it's worth mentioning. I'm not sure the Doctor showed a whole lot of respect for what's the guy's name in, what was it, Time of Angels.
I mean, this is true.
I mean, yeah, he threw a few jobs at the church for that, I guess, mission. So I can see the Doctor just screwing around with people. It just gives him something to look forward to. But yeah, in this case, it sort of backfires against him because this guy that he's antagonizing, what's he call it, a rat code, where he sort of usurps leadership from Shea. So Shea is, of course, being deferential to the Doctor because, of course, she thinks he's above her. But because this guy's been consistently antagonized by the Doctor, he's sort of causing to question her leadership skills, and then is able to get someone to agree with him, and boom, he has command. Which doesn't mean that much, because like 2 minutes later, like he and 3 other people are down. Yeah, the Doctor lost control, but like for about 5 minutes, and that's about it. It may not have quite as strong as a feeling as Midnight did when he lost control there.
No, it doesn't. Like, yeah, 4 people died, and that's not good for them, but not much else really came of it. We got to see more of the creature kind of throwing people away when they got directly behind the, I suppose, host for the Midnight Entity, which was fine, I guess. So it was kind of nice to see a couple of more thematic connections to Midnight, even if it was just a small thing like that. If it's not obvious listening, we did have all that many notes for this. We were really enjoying the first 25 minutes when it was doing all the build up to what this creature was. They were looking at the wall. The doctor finds out that there's exotronic energy, that they strip mine the place for diamonds. All of that was really fun, and all of this happening while Belinda's staying behind because she's a nurse, talking to Alice and just trying to help her hand. She got a bit of a scrape on it. And they both learn about the same time, the doctor and Belinda, talking to the people here, that none of them recognize Earth. None of them have heard of it. So all of that was really interesting, and all of that was fun. So we had almost no notes for any of that. We were just liking it a lot. Then when I suppose, main entity gets more quote-unquote revealed, when more people start seeing flashes behind Alice, and when the doctor gets back, I think the episode loses not so much as for momentum, but it does, to me, lose a lot of the interest that they had previously to build up to that. And that's always a risk when you do a reveal. But there are ways around it, and I feel like this episode did it fight us how to keep that level of stress up. Which is strange to say, considering we see a woman literally commit suicide here just to try to save the rest of her crew. But as we see at the end, perhaps that didn't matter at all.
Yeah, I'll say that the episode largely had somewhat of a lower key feel because it's an entity that we don't really see. I mean, we do see small glimpses, and I have to imagine there are people out there who aren't happy that we even saw that much. I would not be surprised if that was a talking point among the fandom. But I do think it's arguably anticlimactic. But at the same time, it sort of fits with the lower key style of the episode, sort of a darker episode. And like James said, this woman sacrifices herself in the hopes that maybe it would take the entity with her, and then they ideally would nuke the planet like the doctor said, and all would be well.
It is funny that the doctor's one plan for this, and I know it wasn't so much the doctor, this was something the soldier who was the guy who the doctor was addicted to, Cassio, had suggested that they should have just nuked the base from the start. And honestly, like, this creature, there's not much good that seems to come of it, so perhaps they sort of just done that. Yeah, it would have been a sad day for Alice, but at the end of the day, you can't have this creature getting out into the universe. But alas, it looks like it gets that wish anyway, or at least it seemed like it got that wish. It was not quite clear at the end of the episode. It didn't show it, which is showing a lot of restraint. I really did expect in the last second maybe to show a little bit, but no, they just instead the screen goes to black and then we hear some whispering and then it ends. It would have been kind of hilarious. It would have been sort of place. But if the fans from Lux had shown up in the credits of this one's talking about this one, and they had just kept that up for the rest of the season.
That's how the last episode's going to end. When all of reality is destroyed, like, wow, it's not good, guys, I know, and then they start disappearing.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but
yeah, I'm probably not going to be hired on as a writer, so it's okay. But yeah, like James said, I did have a ton of notes when watching this, because I think it's certainly a consistent episode. The mystery and tension, I think, is pretty solid. But I guess I just didn't see like an extra bang to it. I think it's nice to see the Doctor facing one of the times that he's failed in the past, seeing if he can, I guess, face this entity and actually win. And in a way, he really doesn't this time around either. But I'm just not sure if that's enough to give this the bang I was sort of hoping it would have. Which I guess, when I say I didn't love the episode, that's what I mean. I still think it was a decent episode. I still think it was nice and tense at times. And I appreciated the dark atmosphere and the mystery about what's going on with Earth. Like, none of these people have heard of Earth, despite the fact that Earth is pretty much spread around the galaxy at this point, I'm assuming. But as an overall, I guess, experience, it's more like good, but not great. It's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, this is going to be a fate that befalls anything that tries to sequelize, which isn't a word, but I do quite like it, so I'm going to keep using it. That tries to sequelize itself with extremely popular forebears, and Midnight is easily a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 episode. There's really no question about that. Every now and then you see the person, oh, Midnight's overrated, I would give it a 2, which I haven't seen, but I'm sure they exist out there. And yeah, so everything comes down to opinion, and there are people who think Space Babies is better than Midnight. Gods, please, I never meet them. But Midnight's one of the best episodes of the Revival series. Any type of sequel to that is one, going to feel unnecessary, because it basically inherently is unnecessary, and two, is not going to be as good. It's almost not possible. Now, I do think Rashida Davies has a lot of skill in writing episodes of this type of nature. Now, I might be wrong. I think he wrote The Waters of Mars, and that also had a whole derelict base. Not so much derelict, but we saw what happened to the people who were also way out exploring somewhere where there's no hope anywhere near. And those are always ripe for the type of horror stories like The Waters of Mars, like The Impossible Planet, The Saint and Pit. All these stories that have popped up in New Who that are in these types of bases usually do a pretty good horror theme, and this is no exception. This episode was certainly not as good as Midnight, and like I said, it lost a lot of its flair in the second half. But I still think for Ncuti Gatwa's era, it's going to be in the top 5 for me. And like I said, I don't think I liked it more than Lux, but they are completely different beasts in terms of episode style. So I mean, in many ways, a lot of this, if this episode had been the first half all the way through, I would easily have liked it more than Lux. It would have beaten that out. But because it just wasn't, and because the Doctor apparently learned a bit about this creature we didn't get to hear it, which I find really more annoying than anything. The entire point of this creature in Midnight, at least, was the Doctor had no clue what it was, had no idea how to actually fight it. Of course, there he also wanted to reason with it a bit, but that's the Doctor for you. I get that. But he apparently learned something from this creature. Again, he heard the creature say his name, that the creature knew his name, and yet the audience doesn't get any of that. So now the Doctor knows a little bit more about this creature than the audience does, so we're no longer at the same level in terms of knowledge. I know it's probably not a lot more. I'm sure he doesn't know its life history. I'm sure he wasn't dictating an autobiography. But nonetheless, I think that ruins it a little bit. But either way, this is still, like I said, easily a top 5 Ncuti Gatwa episode, for me at least, even with the slightly middling second half.
Yeah, I would probably agree. I'd need to go back and consider. But certainly I think it's strong enough that it easily could be in the top 5, which I think is encouraging. Certainly this season so far has been a lot stronger than the previous season, which of course we were hoping for, but you never know. So it just really depends on if they can land some of this Mrs. Flat stuff. Speaking of which, with Mrs. Flat popping up at the end and apparently being, or what would you say, in charge of the I guess we don't really know what her position is, but it seems like she has some type of position in the hierarchy of this military-esque thing.
I believe they call it the Federation, or did they call it the Foundation?
Yeah.
Because that was part of the Doctor's concerns that, well, Earth is part of the Foundation, that's just fact. And they're like, nah, man, there ain't no Earth. I didn't see nothing. So I'm wondering about Mrs. Flat. Now, it would be really interesting, I know this is almost certainly not where it's going, if this Mrs. Flat was the actual, quote-unquote, identity of Mrs. Flat.
And the other things are total imprint.
No, not imprint. Unlike the whole issue with Susan Trist's character, I do think all the times we've seen Mrs. Flat, it's been the same person with the same level of cognizance. Perhaps not 73 yards, but I don't know, maybe. Either way, though, it would be really cool if who Mrs. Flat is, or at least this would be an idea, if who Mrs. Flat is this person in this timeline, and they can just go back into the past from this point, but this is still who they actually are. Now, I don't know what point that would be, and I'm sure that's not going to be the actual answer, but that would be kind of interesting. If this seed, which is the only seed we've seen of her, where she seems to be in an actual position of power, because we've only known that she could time travel, or at least is in different eras from the end of last episode. Before that, she was just a neighbor. So since she's acting in the position of power here, It would be interesting if this was actually Hall and not just cosplaying on Hall part to try to do more for talking of the Doctor.
And if that is the case, then I hope they're able to set that up in about 3 more episodes. Because I have to imagine Mrs. Flood is going to have a lot to do with the story on the engine. So I feel like the time she has left is going to be in theoretically Lucky Day, the Sound Contest one, and then of course the 2-part finale. That's just at least the vibe I would get.
Yeah, and see, I still don't think she's going to have too much to do in Lucky Day. I feel like what might happen is a kind of, I don't want to say tryst, but a little turnaround during the Intergalactic Sound Contest where the Doctor is able to solve whatever the issue that comes up there, and then there's still like 5-6 minutes left where a confrontation with Mrs. Flood happens, and that leads into the 2-part finale. I don't have high hopes, but I think that'll be kind of interesting.
But yeah, I think as for this one, the most interesting aspect is probably the idea that I guess Earth is not relevant or not existing at this time point. So that's going to give the Doctor something new to investigate as he's still trying to get Belinda home. And we probably mentioned this earlier, but James mentioned the idea of triangulation. And I think the Doctor said some in this episode that every trip they take is going to get one step closer to being home. So I think it comes down to the same way. Like, obviously, I think they were hoping to get this episode. But hey, they'll probably get there at some point. Might not be in the same reality, but that's how it goes.
I mean, she wants you to get back to your father. There's something about the lines that she's had when it relates to her family. I have nothing to say about it, except every now and then, it happened in this episode, and it happened during the beginning of Lux, and honestly a bit during the Robot Revolution, where she sounds a little more aware than she sort of just how dangerous it is. I don't know, I can't really put it into words, but part of Belinda almost sounds like she's play acting. And maybe that's being extremely unfair, or maybe that's literally a plot point that's being really hidden. I don't know. It's like I said, it's really hard for me to put into words what I mean. But it's just the way that she intoned about remembering her father during that scene. There was one line, and unfortunately I don't remember what line it was, that just felt a little off to me. The way that she said it.
I mean, there was the line in the Robot Revolution where she mentioned the TARDIS without ever being told it was the TARDIS.
And that was the line I was referring to for that episode. And I almost wonder if somehow Belinda, and I don't know in what case this could be true, but I mean, this is the Doctor Who universe, they could literally do anything they want. But if someone sees a trap for the Doctor, an actual human trap to get the Doctor interested for whatever plans Mrs. Flood has. I don't know. I think there'll be somewhat interesting. I mean, there's a lot of things that will be interesting. And there's just, I'd like to see more of Belinda. And maybe she's just a normal, exactly what she claims to be. She's a 30-something-year-old, late 20s-year-old woman who lived on Earth, blah, blah, all of that. That could very well be the case, and that's fine. But every now and then there's just strange lines from her that seem just slightly out of sync with how I think that she should be portrayed. But like I said, that's just perhaps me overthinking and overhearing things. Although if she's an Autan, I'm going to claim so much bragging rights. Hashtag Belinda is not an Autan.
Well, you never know. So that's where it's leading. The nesting consciousness is what Mrs. Flood is. Mrs. Flood is just a nesting consciousness in human form.
I can roll with that. I like it.
There you go. But yeah, it really depends on how they land the whole thing, and that's, I think, largely going to determine what this season's going to look like when we look back on it in the future.
This is very true. Because of the way that the last season ended, the whole season in retrospect, as we saw during Empire of Death discussion, is just worse because the mystery reveal was literally nothing. It was a last to nothing. I swear I've never seen a worse mystery reveal. But this one, again, like if they can actually land the Mrs. Flood stuff, then this season will be all the stronger for it. So fingers crossed that's what's going on. And as for this episode, it's not going to beat Midnight. I do hope Russell Davies didn't think he was going to beat Midnight. One would hope that there's enough self-awareness there. But I thought it was a rather good time, very suspenseful in the first half. A lot of the characterization for the swords is, most of them were plain, but they still seemed like people. they seem like people we would have seen during the first Russell Davies era. So I was happy about that. It was, in fact, like what Michael mentioned earlier, kind of similar to the Time of Angels, Flash and Stone, where the personalities, we didn't see much in either story, but they sort of just seemed like real people, and I appreciated seeing their hair as well. And like I said, I think this should be in one of the top 5 best Gatwa episodes, unless you have 2 pretty good ones back to back.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that Russell Davies knew that making a sequel to Midnight would be very controversial given how popular Midnight is. So, I mean, I have to imagine he did have some self-awareness, but you never know. And even though this episode isn't as good as Midnight, it's still decent, it's still pretty good, and certainly the atmosphere is pretty good too. But of course, that is, as always, just our thoughts. If you want to share what you thought about this episode down below here on YouTube, or you could reach out to us on Twitter at Brothers Mahoney. And I'm sort of eager myself to see what people thought about this one. So I have to imagine it's not going to be as strongly positive as Lux, but you never know. Fandoms can be a strange thing. So yeah, thanks for listening. This has been Michael.
And I've been James.
And you've been enjoying the Brothers Mahoney. Have yourself a pleasant time.